All right, and last but certainly not least, we've got the Kentucky Wildcats, the fighting Mark Stoops, who is going to be in his 10th season at Kentucky, which I mean just feels like he's been there for forever. But I mean, still 10 years is a long time, and it feels like he even kind of just got there. But he's built a contender in maybe not as traditional football school as even within their own athletic program. There's been some disagreements of what type of school Kentucky is, and you know, I'm also like, why can't they be both? Why does it have to be one or the other? But I also get that that's a whole separate conversation. But I mean, even though the fact that that's a conversation is just proof of what Mark Stoops has been building there. I think they only had 2 10-win seasons, maybe even in their history, about a long time, and he's had 2 10-win seasons since they've been there. And so there's a lot riding high on it, and can they keep building on this? You know, it took them out from being consistent middle of the pack, more of a bottom dweller kind of a team, and when it comes to football, to being a team that a lot of people are picking to finish like second or third, or like that upper tier of the East. And so probably the composite has them about three. Athlon has them going 8-4. Last year they went 10-3, which is a big deal. I think 10 wins for any team is a big deal, and that's just a big marker of success. And so big props to them for last year. So the question is, can they repeat that? I think the question for them is because with that they're replacing a lot. I think people are high in them, but I think that we also have to be, I don't want to say careful, but you also have to be aware of what are they bringing back. Like last year's success doesn't always turn into next year being a guarantee. We're just going to win 10 games again, or necessarily we're going to like not do as well because of all the young guys. It's a very year by year, of course, and there's a lot of moving parts, and so that's why we do this. That's why we want to spend our time doing this and being up to speed with it. So they won 10 games. That's great. Another market that's very interesting. Half their wins were by a score or less. So they're kind of almost the flip side of, say, Nebraska, where they, famously lost like 8 of their one-score games or less. Half their games they won by a score or less. So you flip a couple of those, we're talking about, an 8-5 team, and it doesn't feel as like a big of a year for them. So of course they've got Will Levis, who is going to be a very strong case for being one of the top quarterbacks in next year's NFL draft. And I think if he has another great year, then by all means if he has a great year and leading Kentucky to, say 8-9 wins again, then I mean he'll be up there, I think. I mean, of course, he's the guy you circle for them, and I think he even has an outside shot, even for a Heisman, if he continues to build, as even the NFL experts are saying. It's hard to put that on them all the way this year, or on him until he actually goes out and starts proving it a little bit. But there are some opportunities for him, of course. And so if he helps propel them to another 10-win season, and they're fighting with Georgia in that second and last week of the year, hosting in a night game at Kroger Stadium, I mean, he might see his name called to New York, is all I'm saying. Don't be surprised by that, especially with all the hype that his name's already being circled as one of the top QBs. Everyone loves to do that. So that's the thing with him. He threw for 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns. This is a very interesting stat. He's the first Kentucky quarterback since 2014 with over 3,000 yards, passing and rushing. I mean, that's a big deal, However, this is another key stat that I think is very important for him. He's got to cut down on the turnovers. For them to be successful and continue that level even more so, I think this year, they've got to cut that down because they lost the turnover margin by 11. They had negative 11 turnovers and still won 10 games. That's impressive. And of course, that comes with Chris Rodriguez, the running back. There comes with not fumbling as much. That's not all on Will Levis, but 24-13, like 13 is probably a little bit too many for this year. I think there's maybe a little bit less room for margin, especially when you're trying to replace all these pieces, especially early in the year, I think if he's trying to force it too much, it'll be very interesting to see how he's playing. If he's like trying to force it and prove that he is that guy, or if he's letting the offense come to him and not trying to do more than what he's being asked to do, just being himself. I think that's a really big key for them. I mean, huge loss is Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson. Sorry if I mispronounced that. He had 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, 104 receptions. I mean, the receptions and yards were school records, and it's hard to replace that. And honestly, I don't even know if it's all the way fair to replace that. You know what I mean? Like trying to find that one guy to do that. I think what could even be better for them is you're finding it within the system. Is you're having to fight that, not just stop one guy, but you're trying to find a couple guys. Got a couple transfers. You've got Tavion Robinson from Virginia Tech. You've got Javon Baker from Bama. So we'll see if those guys can step up. I think you probably will see a little more even distribution across the board. A guy like DeMarcus Harris, see if he steps up. You have an interesting freshman in Dane Key from Lexington, so from his hometown. He's a 4-star. We'll see how he steps up into the offense. So I think you'll see the ball evenly distributed a little bit more. Another big factor into this is Chris Rodriguez, excuse me. He unfortunately got arrested, back in the spring, and so as of right now, I'm not seeing exactly how many games he'll miss. It's looking like not like the whole season or as many as we thought. Maybe around like 4 or something like that, which would bring him back ready to go at Ole Miss and South Carolina and some of those types of games. Would miss Florida. He's probably missing the Florida game, which is week 2 for them. So how much he misses will be very interesting. They've got a strong guy in Kavasier Smoke, who averaged 5 yards per carry. I mean, Rodriguez had 1,300 yards. So, but Smoke seems like from what I'm hearing, he'll be good at filling in. Obviously, you want Rodriguez, but they won't miss as much of a beat maybe if Smoke can step up into that role, especially with how much they're missing. So that being said, I think it's just cutting down on the turnovers and seeing how that rolls. Also, they lost our offensive coordinator, but they've got Rich Scandarella. I think it's how you pronounce that. It's his first year, but he used to be the San Francisco 49ers QB coach, and he fits within that Sean McVay type of system, how they run offense. So there might be a switching as much of the offense as might be anticipated. So it's probably good for them, maybe not switching it as much, but they lost a lot, especially on the line. They're having to replace on both sides of the ball. So how much push they're getting there, and then they give Levis and the running game enough time for that to develop, because that's a really important piece of that, is how they kind of go, especially on the road early with Florida, hostile environment. When they're the team coming in, it's usually the other way around, and Florida's been a team that was the monkey off their back to beat them, but now it's like you're the team probably that's arguably that's a big game for them very early, and that's the next step for them in that type of game, go on the road and beat them in a game that you probably maybe even a slight favor, or at least it's an even spread, and that's not an easy place to play. So that's what I have for them. On defense, they bring back all their linebackers, which I thought is pretty good, especially the way they play defense, and seem like they're very sound and doing their job, and having seniors and all coming out for their extra year in the middle of their core. That's a big deal. Question for them again is on the defensive line. Will they step up and control the line of scrimmage? Because if the defense is on the field a lot and they can't get off the field as much, you're giving your offense less time, and you're letting you're wanting to dictate the offense versus the other way around, of course. I'm not saying anything that's not obvious, but it's still it's you're wanting to replace that. And I think so as we think about Kentucky, that's the thing for me is will they establish a line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball? If they win that, I think they've got a great shot at doing really well again. But expectations for them, I think an 8-win type of season is really good for them, and you're fighting to finish, top 3, top 2. Let's say they can finish second behind Georgia, and everything goes right all the way, or maybe even fighting Georgia for the top spot. But I think realistically, if they can finish second or third, that'd be a big step for them. And say you put together 8-win season, 9, you finish 9 with a bowl game victory. I mean, that's awesome. So I think a lot to be high on with Kentucky, but I think also too, very interested to see how they take last year's success and move it into next year to keep building that momentum. So there you have it.